The dad from Oregon, accused of spiking smoothies for his daughter's friends at a sleepover, admits to the crime, and now he's learned his punishment. I have the details from Michael Meyden's sentencing. Thanks for joining me for Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Michael Meyden is going to prison for spiking mango smoothies that he gave to his daughter's friends, but his sentence isn't long enough for the girls he's now admitting to victimizing. Meyden was an architect living in a $1 million house in Lake Oswego last summer when he hosted a sleepover for his daughter and her friends. The girls were 12 years old last August when they were invited to Meyden's home for the sleepover with his daughter. The girls described Mr. Meyden to be very involved with their activities during the sleepover. Mr. Meyden had taken them to get their nails done, pick up a pizza for dinner, and directed their activities. The girls explained that Mr. Meyden was constantly checking in on them and interjecting himself into their conversations. The girls stated they played in the sprinklers, went into the hot tub, took showers, and got ready for bed at Mr. Meyden's direction. The girls stated they spent the majority of their time in the basement where they were doing a quote spa night, watching movies while they did facials. Now, this is all according to an affidavit for a search warrant for Meyden's home. The girls told detectives that sometime between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. last August 25th, Meyden made them the mango smoothies in milkshake style glasses before they were told to go to bed. The smoothie's consistency was described as having a thinner liquid with bubbles in it. Mr. Meyden specifically gave each of the girls specific colored reusable straws to distinguish their own drink. Mr. Meyden was adamant that the girls drink out of their own cups. The girls told detectives that Meyden insisted they go to bed around midnight, and two of the girls went to sleep on a pull-out couch in the basement. The girls' names are redacted or blacked out in the search warrant affidavit, but it says one girl stated she and another girl were cuddling on the pull-out couch. She explained she and the other girl were laying the same direction and her arm was over her body. She stated at some point that Mr. Meyden came downstairs and pretended to be asleep. She stated he removed her arm from the other girl's body by moving the girl's body further toward the opposite side of the bed. This concerned the girl so much, so she rolled over her friend and placed her arm on her friend and remained awake in fear that Mr. Meyden was going to do something to her friend. The girl stated Mr. Meyden went upstairs. She stated that she remained awake, and sometime after, Meyden returned downstairs to check on them again. Now, I told you when we covered this in the past that Meyden then returned to the basement, and the girl who was awake said that she pretended to be asleep. The girl said she saw Mr. Meyden in the dim light place his finger underneath her nose as if to see if she was soundly asleep. He then waved his hand in front of her face. She stated that she pretended to be asleep, and shortly after, he walked toward the sliding glass door and went outside into the backyard. The girl who was awake is the hero in this story because she trusted her gut and called for help. The girl texted her mom at 1:43 a.m., "Mom, please pick me up and say I had a family emergency. I don't feel safe. I might not respond, but please come get me. Please, please pick up. Please, please." The girl's mother didn't respond, so the girl texted a family friend who came to get her. The girl's parents went to Meyden's home to get the two other girls around 3 a.m. The search warrant affidavit quoted Meyden as telling the girl's mother, "I don't understand," when she knocked on the door, and that he told her to come back in the morning because the girls were sleeping. The girl's mother told Meyden she was taking the girls with her, and she awoke them in the basement and took them with her. The girls were taken to a children's hospital where they tested positive for benzodiazepines. Those are a group of depressant drugs used to treat anxiety, depression, and seizures. Since Meyden was charged, court records showed his wife filed for divorce and he was living in a camper in Vancouver, Washington. He also tried to take his own life. But now, in a hearing this week, Meyden pleaded guilty to felony charges of causing another person to ingest a controlled substance. Meyden was sentenced to 24 months in prison and 3 years probation after his release. The victims in the case are furious. They don't think it's enough time. One of the girls said, "I trusted him because he was my best friend's dad. He abused that trust." Another girl was quoted as telling Meyden and the judge, "I am disgusted by the look of your face and your actions and all that you have done. You are horrible, and I will always hate you for what you have done." A third girl told Meyden, "My life has become a living hell because of you and your actions. She also called him a monster. A report in the Lake Oswego Review quoted Meyden as denying he had any nefarious intentions or that he planned to do something sexual to the girls. As parents, we all fail, but I failed in the most spectacular way possible. It was my fault, and it was also bad judgment. Meyden is also quoted as saying, I wanted it to be a big kickoff event that everyone would brag about. People want to assume the worst. I never thought of that. The website reported Meyden said, I want to make it up to you. I know sorry doesn't cover this at all. I don't know what to do. The Clackamas County District Attorney's Office declined my request for an interview, but I was given a statement from DA John Wentworth that says Mr. Meyden's actions are inexcusable and reckless and require a punishment commensurate with the crime. The impact this event has had on the child victims, their families, and our community has been enormous. This is another Law and Crime legal alert. Have you experienced severe gastroparesis or other side effects after taking Ozempic or another GLP-1 weight loss medication? The Ozempic lawsuits allege that the drug can lead to severe intestinal blockage and persistent vomiting, and that manufacturers allegedly failed to provide adequate warning about these risks. True Law, one of our legal sponsors, is helping those injured file a claim through an experienced attorney who helps ensure your claim is thoroughly presented. Visit www.glp1case/crimefix to answer less than 10 questions and check your eligibility to file a claim. I want to bring in somebody who has a lot of experience in cases like this one. He's Chris Hansen. He's the host of Takedown with Chris Hansen, also the co-founder of the True Blue Crime Streaming Network. Chris, the victims' families in this case are outraged. They wanted a 54-month prison sentence. Instead, Michael Meyden gets 24 months. Your thoughts?
Well, I would be outraged too if I were a parent. I mean, look at the facts of this case, Angenette. You had a guy who drugged young girls at a sleepover and now says that the only reason he did it was to calm them down so they could sleep and have energy the next day. I don't buy it. This pattern of behavior is consistent with somebody who is not up to any good. And you have to wonder what would have happened had, some of these girls reported to their parents that they didn't feel right, there was something wrong, they didn't get the kids out of there. The whole thing is suspicious to me. I mean, why do you do that? It doesn't make sense. If you're that concerned about girls staying up late, you don't have the sleepover. And so it appears that he's come up with an excuse that somehow, flew with the prosecutors who accepted this deal. Now he's going to be punished, but boy, it seems like he's getting off easy.
I'm stunned that prosecutors who deal with crime on a daily basis, I'm assuming that they deal with serious crimes on a daily basis, bought this excuse. I mean, if you you call the girls' parents if you are saying, hey, I'm worried that the girls aren't going to get a good enough night's sleep, maybe I give them a melatonin. The guy put a controlled substance in smoothies and didn't tell the girls and insisted they drink the whole thing. So how are these prosecutors coming up in their heads with, oh, we couldn't find any nefarious, like there wasn't nefarious intent or sexual
Thank God
intent or something.
thank God there was no nefarious act. We won't know the intent because that lies inside the mind of this man.
But Chris,
So,
these prosecutors think there wasn't any sexual intent. I mean, I don't know where they're getting that.
I mean, I don't buy it, and again, I look at the world sometimes very in a very dark way because of these predator investigations. I mean, we had a guy show up in a sting just last week who was on the sexual offender registry who had done 7 years in prison for being busted in 2002 for having sex with his girlfriend's 13-year-old daughter. And now he's in my sting house to meet a teenage girl who in this scenario was being, sold by her aunt for sex. And the transcripts were there. He comes in, he sits down. I knew the background. We knew he was a registered sex offender when he walked in. But, some of these guys just never will learn. And again, maybe the prosecutors, I don't have every single, insight into this case. Maybe the prosecutors didn't feel that they could prove charges above and beyond what they were able to get him to plead guilty to. But the whole thing is just so dark, so disturbing, and so potentially predatory that it cries out for more severe punishment, I think.
The girls, one of the girls' mothers did not buy it either. And she said that, there was an area of the house where there were some sex toys found, which, you know, I mean, that happens. People have those things in their houses. But obviously, the girl's parents don't believe that he didn't have an intent that wasn't of a sexual nature. Now, we don't know because we don't know this
Right,
guy.
exactly.
But
And,
what
and
we
again,
do know is that he put benzos in their smoothies, and then he's going down and putting fingers under noses to see that they're asleep, and checking to see that they're asleep. And he's doing it 2 or 3 times, and he's freaking the one girl out enough that, thank God, she calls the neighbor for help, or a family friend for help, after she can't reach her parents. And they scoop up the girls and they get the girls out of there. I get that he doesn't have a criminal history, but how many cases, Chris, do you and I cover where the person gets caught and it's their first time getting caught?
I mean, to me, the way this plays out, it was like he was having his little fantasy. He had these young girls over there. He's got his plan, whatever it is. He gives them these smoothies, which are drugged, they're laced, and then checks to make sure that they're sufficiently asleep to do what? I mean, what do you think he had up his sleeve? What do you think his intent was? It was nothing good. I mean, just drugging anybody without their permission is a horrible thing to do. That in itself is predator like and deserves a prison sentence, severe punishment. And then you add on to it what could have happened had one of the girls not been alert enough and concerned enough to call for help.
The DA, would not grant our request for an interview. He basically said that, they could not. This is inexcusable and reckless behavior. It required punishment commensurate with the crime. The impact this event has had on the child victims, their family, and our community has been enormous. Sleepovers, I'm not a big fan of sleepovers anyway, but I think that this is a lesson to all parents to ensure that when you let your kids go sleep over at somebody's house, that you know them very well, that you trust them implicitly, and you have a better relationship with them than just, oh, it's my daughter's friend from school. I think this is Exhibit A, because this is a guy who was he was successful in his field, $1 million house, looks great on the outside, but you go into that nice looking house that looks picture perfect on the outside, you never know what is going on behind closed doors. And this happened behind
Well,
closed doors as
I
these girls are getting their nails done and going to the movie and watching movies in the basement and hanging out at this guy's house.
well, I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of sleepovers either, and for this specific reason. But when my kids were way younger, they're all grown up now. But when they were younger, you know, I wouldn't let them go over to somebody's house unless I knew that family personally, and unless I had a relationship with them through the school or friends in the neighborhood. It just wouldn't happen. And I have boys, and obviously with girls, there's a little more sensitivity, but you got to be careful with all kids. And God knows what could have happened had this girl not have been aware enough and had alarm bells not gone off and had she not called for help. We could be having we might not even know about it, number one, but number two, it might be a whole different scenario. Thank God nobody was assaulted in this, but the fact that they were given drugs, against their will, I mean, that's an assault in and of itself, and that to me is inexcusable. I get
Also,
the DA's point of view. He's got to take the case he's given and do the best he can. And so I'm sure there was a thought that, this is as hard as it can go, and we're going to take the plea and call it a victory. And I see a lot of pleas in predator cases because Quite honestly, a lot of these jurisdictions are overwhelmed. They've got 100 murder cases waiting to be tried, and they've got some guy who was caught in a sting. Thankfully, he was caught. And these often end in plea agreements. And if there's no prior criminal history, they get a, little better deal, obviously. But, hopefully they will keep an eye on him. He will have to report and God, get some help at least. I mean, who does this? It's inexcusable, offensive, and predatory.
One thing that's also concerning about this, I mean, there's a chance that one of these girls, given their body chemistry, their body weight, could have maybe not awakened from this. I mean, one of the parents,
Absolutely.
OregonLive.com, quotes one of the parents as telling the court, Ann Meyden, in her victim impact statement, "You played Russian roulette with my child's life. She is barely 5 feet tall and on a good day, 70 pounds, soaking wet. And you overdosed her." She said the medical testing showed the level of drugs in her child's system was, quote, "off the charts." So that right there, I mean, thank God they weren't assaulted, but thank God they woke up and made it out of there safely.
Right. Or even, I'm sure there was some ill feeling, if not illness, that resulted from this. You can't do this. I mean, you trust your child with a grown up, the parent of a school friend, and he does this. I mean, I would think that there's some civil liability here as well. And I hope the parents take action beyond the criminal charges. I hope they do, because this fellow should be made an example of. There is
One of the
no possible excuse, defense, or reason for this activity. None.
one of the girls talked about her trust being broken. I mean, how are these girls going to ever trust anybody again?
Well, they certainly won't be going on any sleepovers, no matter whose family it is. I mean, imagine the insecurity of an already vulnerable adolescent. I mean, right? This stage of life is difficult enough as it is. I mean, remember when you were that age, when I was that age, it's a tough time. And then have
Yeah.
some creep who's the father of a friend violate you at this most vulnerable time in your life, lock him up. I mean, it's there's no gray area here. None whatsoever.
No, there definitely isn't. And these were this was his medication too. I mean, he used his own medication, according to all the reporting, to drug these girls. Chris Hansen, thanks so much for coming on. Michael Meyden getting 24 months in prison after pleading guilty. He claims, this was bad judgment. I'd call it pretty bad judgment. And he'll do 3 years on post-release supervision, otherwise known as probation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angenette.
And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.